Where are you? What are you sitting in?
Tree.
In a tree?
Wo sitzt du?
Baum.
Baum! Stimmt.
Hi everyone, I'm Cara and welcome to my channel Bairn and a Backpack. Today's video is a little bit different because I'm joined by my husband Thomas. We're going to be talking about a topic which I'm really excited about. We're going to be talking about bringing up our son Ben with 2 languages. Thomas is originally from the south of Germany and I'm from Scotland, so Ben is growing up with both English and German. Today we're going to be talking about our language backgrounds, about what decisions we made when bringing up Ben with 2 languages, about how successful we've been so far, and if this is something in general which you're interested in, if you'd like to see more videos about bringing up a child with 2 languages and about language development in general, then please think about subscribing, because over the coming weeks I'm going to be talking lots more about this topic. So Thomas, to start with, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your language journey so far?
Hi! So as Cara already mentioned, I come from the south of Germany. I was born there, grew up there and also went to school there. I was never particularly interested in languages while I was at school and saw the relevance more when I started playing computer games in English, listened to more music, and when I started traveling by myself. I went to university and did an exchange here in Spain where I learned Spanish and also met Cara and also really improved my English because there were lots of international students there. And I think that's kind of where it started, that I developed more of an interest in learning and also teaching languages because I did some tutoring in German. And then 5 years ago I moved to Scotland and are now kind of like trying to juggle still speaking German quite a lot, English, and also keeping my Spanish going.
It's probably worth mentioning at this point that obviously Thomas has never studied foreign languages but speaks several pretty competently, and I would say that that's quite a norm across many non-English speaking countries, especially here in Europe, that many of Thomas's friends all speak at least one foreign language pretty fluently. I actually studied foreign languages here in Scotland. I studied French and Spanish at university and then went on to become a language teacher. Obviously when I met Thomas, that started my German learning journey. I've actually been quite exposed to foreign languages throughout my life. So my mum was a French and German teacher, and that meant that I was brought up around languages and the idea of travel and having international friends. So I've always been in a kind of multilingual bubble for most of my life, which meant that when it came to bringing up Ben, we were pretty enthusiastic and pretty determined that we were going to give Ben that amazing opportunity. I have spent a lot of my life gaining that skill and been able to speak a foreign language, so the fact that we could give that to Ben and make it so easy for him was pretty much a no-brainer for us.
Ben also has 2 passports. He has a British and a German passport, and by teaching him both of the languages right from the start, we want to make sure that later on in life he has both choices and both opportunities, whether it's to live in a country or to study in the country or to make the same amount of friends or contact to the family in the UK or in Germany. So that's one reason why it's really important for us that he's fluent and competent in both languages.
I think I can speak for both of us when I say that we've definitely both experienced the amazing advantages that speaking a foreign language can bring, whether that's in work, whether it's in travel, whether it's in falling in love with someone from another country. So really we've got a lot of passion and enthusiasm about foreign languages to share with Ben as well. So when I found out I was pregnant with Ben, I immediately started doing some research. I joined some Facebook groups and things which bring together bilingual families to kind of do a little bit of research and find out how we were actually going to bring Ben up with 2 languages. And we decided that for us the method that made sense was OPOL, which stands for One Parent, One Language, which means that I always consistently speak to Ben in English and Thomas always consistently speaks to Ben in German. This was also a little bit strange at first because we also decided that we weren't going to have a family language, one language that Thomas and I spoke to one another in, that Thomas would even speak German to me and I would reply in English. And at first, to be fair, that was quite unnatural because we were used to going into whichever language the other person was talking to us in. So for example, if Thomas asked me a question in German, it would be much more natural for me to give a response in German. So we had to almost train ourselves into always speaking one language.
I think we generally are in a very, very lucky position because Cara's level of German is, even though she never studied it, is good enough to understand almost everything that I say and also have conversations with like my family and friends. And so that meant when I am speaking to Ben in German, Cara always understood what I'm saying.
Exactly, never feel left out.
Exactly, and the other way around, since like I also speak English, but we are aware that in lots of bilingual families, probably not always a given that both partners speak each other's languages, which I think will definitely, or makes it a little bit harder, and where we had it quite easy.
We're also in a pretty lucky position because Thomas and I are both self-employed. We run a business together, and it means that we can split our time with Ben pretty equally. So obviously initially when Ben was a much smaller baby and I was still breastfeeding, I spent the majority of the time with him, but as he's grown up and become a toddler, we pretty much have a 50-50 share of looking after him, which means he's equally exposed to both English and German, which again I know is not the case for every family, and we are very appreciative of the fact that we can do that.
Once we've decided to go with a OPOL, one parent, one language approach, I've started speaking German to Ben straight from the very start. So even when he was still in Kara's tummy, I've read stories to him in German, I always talk to him in German, and that from that point, as much as in any way possible, only speak German with him, and I think that's very important.
Yeah, and I think Thomas will probably also agree with me when I say that actually it's the most natural thing to speak to your child in your native language. I feel you can connect with your child so much more through your mother tongue. So now I want to talk a little bit about what our bilingual journey has looked like so far, how successful we've been, and also what Ben says now. So probably until the age of around 12, 14 months, Ben didn't really say a whole lot. He had a few words that you would expect.
So like mama, papa, da, meaning like there in English. And also it's actually the real like first proper word was Bücher, which means like books in German, but it was kind of like a mix between both. It's like Buka. So we weren't actually ever sure, was it a German word or was it an English word? It was like an in-between.
Yeah, when Ben was then around 16 months, we actually went on a 6-week trip to New Zealand, and he had a lot of time with both Thomas and me, where we were speaking to him all the time in both languages, and then he really started to build his vocabulary, and around 18 months he had a pretty good vocabulary, but he didn't actually have very many duplicate words, so he'd chosen a word, whether that was in English or German, and he was just rolling with that as the word for something. So to give you an example, he always said ja in German, he never said yes in English, and he always said no in English, he never said nein. So he had chosen one, normally the easiest word out of the two languages to say, and was rolling with it.
Yeah, I also think like the reason that we both speak both languages like never really made it like necessary for him to like choose between the words or learning both words for the same thing, because if we went to me and said up, I still lifted him up, and if he said mehr, meaning more to Kara, she still gave him more, so there was no necessity.
Oh, Ben's just woken up. We'll be back. So Ben has just woken up from his naps. He's going to be joining us for the rest of the video. We didn't quite manage to film the whole video while he was asleep. He's now doing some dino puzzles here, so if you hear some random dino noises, you know why. So when Ben was around 18 months old, he started to then acquire some words in both English and in German. So he did know both the words, but didn't necessarily use them in the right context. So he still sometimes spoke German to me, and still sometimes spoke English to Thomas.
The very first time that we actually noticed it when he was saying the word Kuh and cow for the same thing, but as Kara said, like he just mixed it up. And then only probably like now with like 19, just about after 19 months, he started to distinguish if he's talking to me or if he's talking to Kara. And again, we noticed it when he started saying always like Papa to me and Daddy when he was talking to Kara about me.
Yeah, and there are some words which he still prefers in one language, so even though he now knows it, you know, if I ask him, he says something to me in German, I say, well, how do I say that? He does tend to then say it in English. There are still some words which he automatically goes to in one language. So for example, he really loves the word again in English. He doesn't say nochmal as often until Thomas reminds him. Same, he really loves the word stone in German. He says Stein much more often than he says stone until you actually remind him and ask him. So he definitely still has a bit of a preference towards one language with certain words.
Wie viele Steine hast du da? 1, 2.
How many do you have, Ben?
1,
1, 2. What?
Ja, das da. Traube, super. Und daneben?
Foto.
Ne, Tomate, ja. Und das da?
Ei.
Ein Ei, genau.
Banana.
Bananas. What's that?
Egg.
Egg. What's that? What is that?
Fish. Potato.
A potato. And what's on top?
Cheese.
Cheese.
For me, it's also very important that he gets exposure to German, not just from me, but also like from family and friends, which is obviously a lot harder since we live in Scotland. And Kara's siblings, family and friends seem a lot more than my family and friends. But that's also one reason, for example, he doesn't get a lot of screen time, but when we do watch movies, we always watch them in German and not in English. And I also just make sure that like I speak exclusively German to him, which is, to be honest, sometimes a little bit hard, because if we're all like in the family together and I play with Ben and I speak German with him, then the rest of Kara's family doesn't understand what I'm saying, and they're just like, oh yeah, like repeat the German words I'm saying, but can't really join in, which is a little bit of a shame. But at the same time, I don't want to like compromise on teaching Ben German by always speaking another language just if there's somebody else apart from Kara around, which for me sometimes makes it a bit awkward and hard.
Yeah, it's worth saying that we also do spend quite a lot of time in Germany. We actually work in Germany for at least around 2 months of the year, and so we do spend a significant amount of time in the other countries as well, which I think as he grows up will be really important to help him feel German and kind of develop a bit of an identity as well. I think Thomas and I have definitely both prepared ourselves for the fact that the future is not going to be easy, that it is going to be a challenge to bring Ben up with both languages, especially, for example, when he starts school and will become much more exposed to English. We know that his English is going to accelerate and that we're going to have to put a lot more effort
also,
into
for
his
example,
German acquisition.
I don't know yet like how to teach somebody to read and write like in German, so like that we need to learn that as well.
It's going to be a huge learning process for us, but we're prepared for that, and we're both mega committed to doing that as well. And it can't be because he's got his. We'd better open the door and...
Denn ich weiß nicht wer. Schwimme hin und schwimme.
Ja.
Schwimme her und schwimme.
Hin.
Möchte wissen, wer ich
Bin.
That's us for today's video. Hopefully it's helped to paint a bit of a picture of what the early months of bringing up a bilingual child look like. In the future, we are going to be posting videos which show our challenges and our struggles with bringing up a bilingual child, tips for bringing up bilingual children, and also development updates as we go along on this journey. Language development is also something which I'm really fascinated by, coming from a language teaching background. So it's also something which we work quite actively with Ben on. So I'm also going to be posting some videos about language activities and ways that you can support language development even if your child is monolingual. So if that's something that you are interested in and would like to see more of, please subscribe. And if you've enjoyed today's video, please think about giving us a thumbs up as well. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope that you'll join us again in a future video. Thank you so much. Bye bye. Okay, then can you say bye?
Bye.
Kannst du noch Tschüss sagen?
Tschüss.
Tschüss. Und jetzt noch auf Bayerisch. Vierti. Vierti.
Bitte. Bitte. Bitte.